right, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started on this. We have a short time, but we want to be able to cover the cyber contracts, agreements, and privacy. So welcome to the class. I recognize some of your names, and I've met some of you actually at the Forge Summit last year. So welcome to class. Again, good morning. My name is Becky Passmore. I'm currently a Senior Vice President at the Kroll Cyber Risk at Kroll, which had in our Cyber Risk unit. I'm a cyber analyst, forensic examiner, a threat hunter on a daily basis. I'm also a visiting assistant professor at our at UA Little Rock in our cybersecurity program. I teach introduction to cybersecurity, system security, digital forensics, and I'm building a course on incident response. I teach for Forge and help develop their courses. And before all this, I worked for the FBI for about 23 years and worked in digital forensics and was the program coordinator. So been around for a long time in this area of cyber. So I just want to share some information with each one of you. So our course today is going to be a very high level, basically exploring the legal and practical considerations when it comes to creating effective cyber contracts, agreements, and privacy policies, especially in this rapid evolving world of cybersecurity. We have a few objectives here. We just like to be able to make sure that we define the contracts, outline the different types, discuss the core components, give a general overview, and basically, provide some guidance when it comes to the service level agreements and the fundamental components for the overall design and objectives for the contracts and agreements, especially when it comes to the privacy policies. So this is what we're going to try to cover in this short time that we have together, but we will have a hands-on exercise. So I will want a little bit of feedback from each one of you, especially if you have a computer in front of you. Our hands-on exercise will just be going to some sites to look at some different privacy policies. And if you have a website and you want to share information about your privacy policy, we'll talk about that during the hands-on exercise. So when it comes to cybersecurity principles, we have a mind map which is going to address the fundamentals of cybersecurity. And it begins with data and privacy, and then it focuses on the contracts, agreements, regulatory frameworks, best practices, protection and retention, risk management, and then emerging trends that have an influence in the cybersecurity principles that we all, everyone aims to attain. So with that, data and privacy. Data is information that computer systems or other digital devices collect, store, and process. What are some examples of data that's being collected, stored, and processed? Anyone? You can unmute. You can, I don't know that chat's available, but feel free to unmute and just give an example.
Anything PII related.
Okay. And when you say PII, we're talking about personally identifiable information, and just in general, what would something like that look like?
Yeah, so for my platform specifically, I run an outdoors-based company. We're collecting everything from name, date of birth to property tax records on an individual to verify their property ownership. So it could be any of the above.
Great, thanks, Taylor. Anyone else?
Hi, good morning, Becky. My name
Good
is
morning.
Ian. I run an e-commerce platform, so I have all the customers' information. So I think everything is stored in cloud. That's what we did here.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much, Ian.
I have just a question. Should we be able to see your screen? I'm not sure if it's my individual setting or something else.
No, it's totally on my end. I thought you guys were seeing my
Oh,
screen,
I can
and
see it now.
which is interesting because I just gave you guys a lot of information when it came to this PowerPoint here. Starting from here, where you have some information about me, our goals and objectives, our course agenda, our cybersecurity principles, mind map that you guys did not see. And then we're here at the data privacy. Sorry about that. I thought it was sharing. But yeah, so no, thank you for bringing that up, Brad. Yes, absolutely. What are some examples of data where you have name, address, phone number, email address, financial information, tax records, any other type of information that is being collected from the people that are using your site. So with that, we also have non-personal data collected. What is some examples of non-personal data collected? Anyone have a thought on that?
Can I answer this question?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, Ian. Thanks.
So on my end, we have data on consumer spending habits. Is that considered non-personal?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
That's gonna. Yep.
And the time they spend money on certain things. So
Yep.
something like that. Yep.
That's absolutely correct. Anyone else? So when we talk about non-personal data, you have that user behavior, website traffic, device information, product usage, social media analytics. So you can have non-personal data collected. You can, and we'll talk about this, you can have data that is collected and anonymized or pseudo-anonymized as well. So this is going to be fall within your non-personal data. So when we talk about privacy, that's going to refer to the right of individuals to be able to control access to their personal information and be free from surveillance or unwanted intrusions in their personal lives. And this is where the data and privacy is very important and key. So when we talk about privacy protection, we refer to the practices and measures to be taken to safeguard any personal and sensitive data from that unauthorized access, which on a daily basis, whenever I am working a case and I'm trying to determine how and if something obtained unauthorized access, and whether or not when they were able to gain unauthorized access, if any of the data was used, disclosed, stolen, taken, reviewed, analyzed, whatever the case may be. And that's just to be able to ensure that individuals' privacy rights are respected. And so with that, you have the different controls here, the different privacy protections in place, where giving access controls, providing access control to the personnel that need that to be able to access that. They have a legitimate need to access the information. Then being able to encrypt personal and sensitive data to protect it from the unauthorized access or disclosure. When we talk about the anonymization and pseudo-anonymization, that is where the personal data to remove or substitute those personal identifiers, making it more difficult to identify an individual. And then when you're minimizing the data, that's basically taking the information, taking enough information, collecting and retaining enough information that you're only retaining the data necessary for a specific purpose, and then disposing of it when it's no longer needed. Consent and notice, those are to inform the individuals that are visiting or you're collecting information on, where the use and of their personal information and sensitive data, and they also have can obtain their consent before you are collecting it or using it. Data retention, the data retention policies in place are just there to develop and implement data retention policies that specify the length of that time that the personal and sensitive data should be retained, and based on what legal and regulatory requirements and the business needs. And then privacy impact assessments is going to be the area covered where you conduct privacy impact assessment to be able to identify and mitigate any privacy risks associated with new products, services, or initiatives. Finally, when we talk about the compliance with the laws and regulations, it is ensuring that the privacy protection is complies with applicable laws and regulations. GDPR is UK's privacy law and regulation. California has one, the California Consumer Privacy Act, and then there are others. And all of this falls within that privacy protection, where it is the ability to safeguard the personal and sensitive data of individuals from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure where their privacy is to be respected. Any thoughts or questions on that? So what is a privacy policy? And basically, it's a legal document informing users about what information is being collected when it's being handled. And when it comes to the privacy policy, it is basically providing a agreement, a clause, a notice, a page, or a statement that says what information is going to be collected, where the information is going to be collected from, why it's being collected, how it's being collected, including the cookies and other tracking technologies, as well as who the information is being shared with or sold to, because there are people that collect and then sell to third parties. And then what the rights and rights the users have over the specific data or their data. And then basically the site's content, contact details. So being able to contact someone about the data being collected. And then why do you need a privacy policy? It's because there are data privacy laws, there's third-party service agreements, and it's being able to maintain trust between businesses and customers. So let's look at a couple examples of privacy policies. And with that, if you're from Central Arkansas, the area of Central Arkansas, you probably have heard of and know about Holland Bottom Farms, which is strawberries. And Holland Bottom Farms is in Cabot, Arkansas, and they have the best strawberries. Those and Barn Hill Orchards, we have the best strawberries in Cabot. And I decided to look at their privacy policy, being that they were a farm, they're local, they have a website. So what is being covered? Can everyone see my screen okay? Yeah. Well, nope, we switched to, sorry, let me share what I switched to the privacy policy over here. So with Holland Bottom, if you go to their homepage, on their homepage, scroll to the bottom of the page, they have obviously their beautiful strawberries on there. Their privacy policy is located here. And then reviewing their privacy policy, it talks about third-party disclosure. We do not sell, trade, or otherwise transfer to outside parties your PII. We do not use cookies for tracking purposes. It says, how does our site handle do not track signals? We honor do not track signals and do not track or use advertising. This privacy policy is written with very specifics, very broad statements and answers the questions. They talk about how they've implemented Google AdSense, Google Display Network impressions, demographics. They talk about opting out. Users can set preferences for how Google advertises to use the Google Ad settings page. And it even mentions the California Online Privacy Protection Act, where they talk about the different information regarding privacy policies. So it is very specific, but it is also simple, I would say, and for just being able to read through it and figure out the information we want to figure out. So with that, then we're going to go to the we're going to go to another, oops, we're not going to go there yet. We're going to go to Wix. So Wix.com or Wix is being able to, this is building a website. This is use of, Wix can do a few things, but for the most part, it's building a website and its subdomains. So looking at Wix's privacy policy, we would be able to see more information. What personal information do we collect? And they break it down in 3 sections: information that you provide us, information we collect when you use the services, and information we collect from other sources. So it starts to break it down in more complex information as to what they collect, how they store it, the use of it, especially when they talk about applicants for jobs. Why do we collect the personal information? They break that down and give very good details as to why they make those collections. And what they use your personal information for, it talks about, it's basically set out in that section 3 that we just referred to. How we share your personal information, where they talk about their third-party service providers. Then law enforcement legal requests and duties, protecting rights and safety. It goes on and gives in-depth reason for how they share your personal information. They provide good information about where they store your personal information, and even discusses a section in if you're in Europe, the UK, or Switzerland, when they transfer your personal information, they make sure that they follow the guidelines and the requirements for that. They talk about their Privacy Shield certification, and then use of users' personal information. They break that out, tell how that is collected, used. They talk about the use of cookies and other third-party technologies, through their cookie policy, they state, please note that we do not change our practices in response to a do not track signal. However, most browsers allow you to control what cookies are being used. Communications from Wix, there's promotional messages, service and billing messages, your rights in relation to your personal information. So if you can see, Wix provides a very in-depth description. Obviously, they do collect information. Obviously, they do store this information. And so they provide a lot more very detailed ways of collecting and maintaining, as well as if you have questions and complaints, how it's retained, the data is retained, what security is in place. This is extremely important if they have payment card and they break that out and provide their encryption processes for the payment card industry, data security standards for collecting financial information. The third-party websites, Wix Jobs applications, public forums. So as you can see, Wix provides a lot more information. They provide a very great detail of information, but they obviously collect, store, and it is critical because it obviously is and can be sensitive data, and it's your personal information, and they're trying to be very supportive in maintaining that information from being unauthorized, from being accessed unauthorized. So any questions on the two privacy policies that we just talked about? Okay, so let's go back to here. So let's do a hands-on exercise. Let's look at a couple of different websites. And by all means, if you have a website and you have a privacy policy and you want to share this information, please do so. But for the most part, let's go to, if you're able to go to the website from your desk. This might be, oops, let me back up. Sorry, let me go over here and grab this and share this with you guys in the chat channel. Maybe that's easier. It's just basically the, Instagram.com. So when we go there, let's go there. And let's look at Instagram's privacy policy. And it's here at the bottom, privacy, click on that. And then when you look at their privacy policy, Instagram is part of Meta, and they start out with their privacy policy and what it is and what it covers. And as you go down through, its headings are: what information do we collect? How do we use your information? How is your information shared on Meta or with integrated partners? How do we share the information with partners, vendors, service providers, and third parties, as well as how do Meta companies work together? How can you as the consumer manage or delete your information and exercise your rights? And how long do they keep the information? They have a section here with how do we respond to legal requests, which comply with applicable law and prevent harm. And how will you know the policy has changed? So they give very detailed information about how they maintain everything about you on Instagram. Why and how we process the information is listed here. And as you can see, it's extremely detailed, obviously because they collect quite a bit of information. And then they also mention here in the middle, they do have some anonymizing of the information in some cases where they do anonymize that information. But for the most part, their privacy center has a very detailed section on what they are collecting. So can anyone tell me what personal information is being collected when it comes to Instagram?
Basically everything.
That's right, Sanjay. Basically everything. They list it here. What information do we collect? Your activity, your friends, your followers, your connections, your app browser, your device information, information from partners, third parties, and vendors. And they list everything that they collect, and it's quite a bit of information, and some of it is non-personal and some of it is personal data. So when they're collecting all this information, how is it being used? How is that personal information being used?
Becky, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you think they use most of this data for marketing purposes, or is there other purposes they can use it for?
In my opinion, is that what you're asking?
Yes, ma'am.
So I would say that, you know, as far as the information that's being collected, they are doing a lot of what they say. What they're trying to do is personalize the experience for you by including ads that will entice you or interest you in products or devices. Products across all your devices that you're just generally going to be interested in. So say that you are an individual and you're interested in cars, racing, fancy cars, fast cars, stuff like that. And those are like the areas that you visit the most. Their ads are going to be, and or their information that they're going to be sending you is going to be around that. And I would say for the most part, that's what they do. Now, I don't use Instagram. I have an Instagram account that I've used in the past for testing and validating some stuff. But as far as that goes, I don't necessarily use Instagram. However, I will say that I do use, I have a Facebook account and I look at my Facebook account, and I can tell you when I'm searching for certain things and I'm doing certain things in my browsers and I'm looking for information. If I go to my Facebook feed, I will see tailored ads and or information based on what I was looking at. So Facebook is part of Meta, so I would say that that is definitely how they use your information, as well as they say to use it. They use it to improve their products. Other than that, I haven't seen any other way that they might use your information, but obviously the data is stored someplace, and likely in what we call big data or servers that have a lot of data stored in them.
So I guess my concern there would be if, yes, maybe they say they do or they don't share to third parties, but they also have partners. And then if they say, well, we don't share it, but then they have a partner and then their partner shares it, or a partner of them, the partner shares it. So you've got people selling your data out there.
That's right. That's right, Catherine. And that brings up a great point in the sense that when you look at this privacy policy, they say they have integrated partners. And when you use an integrated partner, you know, how is the integrated partners handle your information? And so it breaks that down. But if they have integrated partners, or if they're sharing information with the other people, third parties or integrated partners, what's the privacy policy of those people as well? So yeah, absolutely. It's not like you can just stop here because you're just using Instagram, but now you have to go and review and or try to determine all the different integrated partners, their products, their services, and who they're sharing that information with. Because you know, they have third parties, external researchers, service providers, vendors, and partners all listed here. And they say they don't sell it, but I mean, they're still all sharing the same information. Now, when we talk about how is the personal information being protected, it is it's you know, it's provided here in some way where it talks about you know, they're following applicable laws, they're doing all that, but as far as how it's being protected, like Wix, where it was talking about the type of encryption is being used, the type, you know, what framework they're using. I was not able necessarily to find any of that information on how it's being protected for the data. So, you know, how it's being encrypted, what framework, specific type of cybersecurity framework they're using, was not listed as detailed. All right, any questions on that? We're going to look at one more. And we go ahead.
Well,
Sanjay.
Ms. Becky, I
Yes.
mean, no matter what, there is nothing protected.
Yeah.
Every time if you go to any website, I mean, whoever building it, they have their lawyer ready. They are also with this privacy policy, not only the computer person writing it, is also lawyer looking it too. So, I mean, they're protected. They're going to collect no matter what, all your information, and they're going to use whatever is they need to. So this is the way the privacy is now.
Yes, and when it comes to that, because they have a privacy policy listed there, because they have that information shared, we should, as consumers or individuals who are going to these sites, know what our rights are, right? Because they do have attorneys, they do have lawyers that represent them, and building their privacy policy and making sure that they are providing the proper legal terms and information. But at the same time, if something happens, so say there is an incident, a cyber incident, and or a data breach, then they have to follow along with what they have told their consumers and people that visit their websites. They have to follow to the law to be able to do the notifications, be able to provide the information to the people that they have collected that information on. But yes, I agree, Sanjay. They do collect, people collect information, and that's why it's important to have a privacy policy and just have a understanding. If you have a website, an understanding of what is being maintained and collected on that website. Oops. So let's go back to Tyson Foods. We'll look at that one real quick. Tyson Foods is a one I thought we would share and talk about being the fact that it is Arkansas-based and has information as well. So looking at their privacy policy, they have a very organized as well privacy policy where they talk about how it applies to websites, apps, platforms for the company, as well as who is the controller of your personal data. And that's the person that's going to be the one that you are going to, you know, that information is going to be released, and how they handle it with only process your personal data according to the privacy notice. They talk about what is the personal data, what personal data do we collect, and how do we use it? How do we collect your personal data? How do we share or disclose it? So they break it down as well. I did not, again, on this site, I did not see too much detail on what encryption was used or how they protected it. So with that being said, is that a good thing, or is that not a good thing for them to either state how it's being protected or not state how it's being protected? Any opinions on that?
It depends on who you're talking to.
Okay.
I mean, if he's a layperson, don't know anything about the encryption, they don't understand anything and they don't even care about how they're doing it. But as a company, of course, they have some kind of encryption there. They will protect it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Becky, I was going to ask that's related to a question I was actually going to ask you. Some of the examples we're seeing, some of them are very detailed, and some of them, including Forge, are not very detailed. Is one or the other meant to be an example of how we should define our privacy policies? Should they be detailed? Should they not be detailed? What's the rule of thumb there?
That's a great question, and leads into the rest of this course. But for the most part, Brad, yours is to be defined for your company. We don't want to articulate our privacy policy around something that doesn't make sense to us as individuals that are running a business or that are writing these privacy policies. And then again, if you're using someone in the as an attorney to write this, whether or not if someone contacted you, if you're able to explain it. And so that, for the most part, you want that privacy policy written around your framework and what information you are collecting and storing. And much like what Sanjay said, in the fact that explaining that the privacy, that the way the data is being protected is not important, obviously, to some people, and quite honestly, they probably don't have an understanding for it. They don't really know what that means. So to answer more into your question, we'll go through and talk about the different pieces that comes together with that privacy policy. And in doing so, a cyber contract is that legal agreement that is formed and executed over the digital platforms, such as the websites, your mobile apps, or your email. And those contracts are used for the online sales, the licensing software, digital content, and the provision in online services. And by having these cyber contracts in place, they are a legal a binding contract or agreement, excuse me, between those parties, right? And having this provides the where it governs the rights and obligations in relation to the use of that the digital systems, networks, and the data. And so when looking at this, these contracts are becoming more increasingly important for businesses and individuals, where they're able to rely more on digital technologies, where we access the different websites, use the mobile applications, and have the email, but are at a higher risk for threats and data breaches. So having these cyber contracts in place is very helpful and useful to businesses, where if something happens, when something happens, that they have that contract in place or that legal agreement in place. And going back to what you were talking about, Brad, in the sense that it protects the business as much as it protects the consumer, right? We all know that an incident and or a breach are possible every day. And it doesn't matter how well your environment is secured. It doesn't matter how much encryption you have in place. It doesn't matter how you're protecting it, especially when you're doing a fantastic job in making those protections. Because when it comes to 0 days, a 0 day can be a 0 day could be occurring, well, it could be occurring right now, but no one might even know about it for a few more weeks. And so if a threat actor is leveraging that 0 day to gain access through an unpatched VPN, a vulnerable firewall, whatever the case may be, it's not that the business or the corporation, the company didn't do a good job in securing their environment. It was an exploit, a vulnerability, a threat that was at that time uncontrollable. So having these legal agreements in place help the overall business when something like that occurs. So with the cyber agreements, there are different, areas that can be considered. And some of the most common ones are, the service level agreements, the software license agreements, the data sharing agreements, outsourcing. All of this information is part of that. And in doing so, you have where they provide very clear definitions to and or terms to anyone visiting the site. It also provides very clear obligations of any of the parties that are involved or parties' interest. It provides good information and clear information when it comes to intellectual property rights. And it provides any way for someone to be able to dispute or have a resolution through the different ways that information is being collected. So they can be written with legal professionals, excuse me, to draft and negotiate cyber agreements, or you can draft, work through a agreement, and then ask for someone to review it and or a legal professional to make sure it covers you as a business and or an individual when building a website. But one of the benefits of having cyber agreements is that they can be executed very quickly and efficiently without the need for physical documents or in-person meetings. So, you know, being able to do this over email, sending it back and forth, having it checked out is very beneficial for all of us, you know, with our busy schedules. When we
There
talk
are
about
companies- I'm sorry.
go ahead, Catherine. I'm
There are
sorry.
companies and stuff that don't actually want to do these because, you know, you want to use a new application that somebody's doing. You try to schedule and do a risk assessment that includes these things on this list as well. They don't want to do it. And then therefore we can't use their application. We have to go to somebody else because they don't want to be bound.
That's interesting. So you're saying with possibly with specific applications or programs out there that if a legal professional or someone in executive management says we can't use that based on whatever reason, then you have to choose another option.
Yes, and in case we have to, if we want to use an app, we have to go through a full risk assessment, which means sending out documentation to the company that has the application, asking them to complete the risk assessment. And then the other stages of that, of course, are service level agreement and things, but then they don't want to do it.
Interesting. And when you say they're talking about the company doesn't, legal doesn't, or third parties don't, or a combination of all.
Maybe a combination. So just whoever is the right person at that company that handles that kind of stuff, they'll either email back and say, okay, they'll be happy to follow through and fill it all out and then follow through with the service level agreement and things like that. Or they'll be like, oh, we're not going to do this. And then we have to find a different application to do what we want to do.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, a lot of those assessments, whether it's in the environment that you're in or the environment someone else is in, and communicating through the configurations and making the right connections and how it all is all set up. You know, I guess that agreement has to go across the board for everyone to have an understanding of use of the environment. It's good information. Thank you. So when we talk about the regulatory framework, there are some different set of laws, rules, guidelines that govern the behavior of individuals, organizations, and governments in a very specific area. Where it come in context of the cybersecurity and privacy, there are regulatory frameworks where they refer to the legal and regulatory landscape that organizations must comply with to ensure the protection of the personal and sensitive data is maintained and properly managed. And it definitely depends on country or region. So when it comes to the GDPR, which is the EU or European Union regulation, where it sets out the rules for the collection, use, and disclosure of personal data. And it applies at all organizations that collect or process the data for EU residents, regardless of where the organization is located. You know, we can be in the US, but if we're collecting data on EU residents, we have to follow the GDPR as rules, collections, and use of personal data. Where it comes to the California Consumer Privacy Act, theirs was very much defined around the GDPR, and it is where the California state law that gives California residents the right to know what personal information is being collected about them, the right to delete that information, the right to opt out of that information, and the sale of that information. When it comes to the payment card industry security standards, that is where the set of security standards were developed for the major credit card companies to ensure the protection of payment credit card data. When it comes to HIPAA, obviously that's about our health information, our personal health information, where the US federal law that sets out the rules where it protects our personal health information. NIST cybersecurity framework is used in as the guidelines and was developed by the National Institute of Standards and Technology for organizations to be able to manage and reduce cyber risk to the best of their capability. So having the compliance with these frameworks, it's essential for organizations to be able to collect and process personal and sensitive data. The problem is failure to comply with any of these frameworks can result in the legal and financial penalties, as well as any reputational damage to the organization. So someone asked recently, when someone goes into business and they produce a website and they're doing their business, do they know about this information? Do they know how this do they know how to set it up? Do they know about these laws? And my answer was, it's probably not well laid out there. Likely people have to go research that and figure that out. But negligence is not acceptable. Obviously, if you are collecting that kind of information and protecting it or not protecting it, if it is received through unauthorized access, there are laws and penalties that go along, financial penalties that can go along with the misuse of personal and sensitive information. So we have best practices when defining the privacy laws, privacy policies. Going back to Brad's question earlier, being able to provide clear definitions and language specific to the needs of being able to collect that data, what your legal compliance is when collecting that data, where it applies to the laws and regulations related to the cybersecurity and practice, your risk assessment and management, very much like what Catherine was referring to, where conducting a risk assessment and implementing the appropriate risk management, and then having that agreement set up with someone else to make sure that they know what they're getting involved in and what you know that you're getting involved in. Also definitely helps with minimizing the risk of cyber incidents or data breaches. And then being able to have a regular review and update within your own contract agreements, anything that's being maintained within that privacy policy. And understanding the data protection and privacy principles, where it is that contract or agreement where you're minimizing the data, the data is being the data is accurate and or it's being retained, and it has a data retention policy in place. Having access controls and data security measures, where making sure that implementing access control where its personnel have a need to know, or they have access and there's a reason for them to have access, especially when it comes to personal and sensitive data. The dispute resolution, including a dispute resolution mechanism where in the contractor agreement gives the organization mediation or arbitration to be able to resolve disputes that may come from that contract or agreement. And then being able to have your record keeping and everything documented, anything that changes gets amended, any information there as far as record keeping and documentation in place, for any problems in the future with either your organization or the the agreement that was made through a contract. Any questions on that? When it comes to data protection and retention, being able to classify the data, have an overall classification for the data where it's the level of sensitivity, access control, encryption, anonymization, pseudo-anonymization, minimizing that data, the retention policy. So all of this is going to be covered as well under the data protection and retention. But its benefits is that it's accessible, it's safer, and it builds trust. In other words, you're being able to communicate with your consumers, your vendors, your personnel that are gaining access, that the data is going to be accessible through availability. It's going to be maintained and safe, and it's there to build that trust with anyone who an agreement is in place with for that storing of personal information. Having a risk management and assessment in place helps when processing or providing a process of identifying, analyzing, evaluating potential risks to an organization's cybersecurity and privacy, and being able to implement measures to mitigate those risks, as well as that critical to protect personal and sensitive data from unauthorized access, use, or disclosure. It's just having an overall good risk management in place that is useful in adjusting and making changes to where necessary. There are some best practices for risk management and assessment by identifying the risk, analyzing the risks, evaluating the risks, mitigating the risks, being able to monitor and review to see the effectiveness of risk mitigation and adjust where needed. The compliance with the laws and regulations, where making sure that applicable laws and regulations are followed, kept, and maintained during any use of personal and sensitive data. And then applying that risk management framework where you have a process guidance that will provide the risk identification, analysis, evaluation, and mitigation. And that risk management framework is available for you. And then in the end, we have emerging trends. I say they're emerging as they're up and coming, but for the most part, it's all here. When it comes to cybersecurity and privacy, where it's constantly evolving, the new threats and challenges that arise each day, AI, the artificial intelligence, you hear about that all the time with Bard and ChatGPT and all the other different types of artificial intelligence out there. The machine learning where they talk about the different quantum, robust computers, the Internet of Things, the different devices that can be connected to a network, cloud security, having your different cloud options, whether it be AWS, Microsoft Azure, or Google Workspace. The quantum computing, very much like the fast machine learning process. Data protection regulations, cyber insurance, which many people either had or are unable to get, or have to go through the assessment of their environment to be able to maintain or get cyber insurance. And then building a zero trust architecture of the environment. Emerging trends are, for the most part, here, and how do they affect your organization, your privacy policies, the agreements and contracts that you have in place, and what do you do with them over the time. So that is all I have for today.